23:14 local time, the lead F-35I pilot from the 116th Lions of the South was 2 hours into Iranian airspace and had not been seen by a single radar. That was the plan. It was also the problem. Shahrud sits 1,600 kilometers from the nearest Israeli airfield, farther than any formation the Israeli Air Force had ever struck, farther than the range tables said was comfortable. The 4 Adirs leading the strike package had aerial refueled twice over Iraq. Their F-15I escorts, the Rayam jets carrying the heavy weapons, were flying on fuel margins that left no room for deviation. No extra minutes for weather, no detours around unexpected threats. Every drop of fuel had an address, and that address was Shahrud. Iran knew that too. The Shahrud missile production complex was not a secret. Satellite imagery had tracked its expansion for 3 years. New buildings appearing behind new blast walls, construction crews working in shifts. The thermal signature of casting pits glowing warm through winter nights when everything else in the high desert was cold. Israeli intelligence had been monitoring Iran's accelerated efforts to rebuild its production infrastructure and expand its missile inventory in the months since the June 2025 ceasefire. What the satellite passes couldn't answer was exactly which buildings mattered most. For that, Israel needed something closer than orbit. The Adirs electro-optical targeting system had been collecting that answer for the past 40 minutes. At 80 kilometers out, the lead weapons officer was building a thermal picture of the complex that no satellite pass had ever captured in this resolution. Shahrud's casting facilities were running hot, not the mixing halls. Those were cold, machinery idle, possibly already evacuated in anticipation of a strike. The casting pits were the ones glowing at 58 degrees Celsius through their rooftops. Active curing, propellant setting inside mandrels that had taken 4 months to pour. Among the targets were factories producing explosive materials for ballistic missile warheads, complexes producing raw materials for missile engines, and a missile engine mixing and casting facility, without which the missiles cannot fly the distance between Iran and Israel. You can rebuild a mixing hall in 5 months. You source the planetary mixers through intermediaries, truck them in at night, have them operational before the satellite passes, confirm the wreckage is cold. Iran had done exactly that after the June 2025 strikes. The missiles currently arcing toward Israeli cities every night were built with propellant from machines Israel had already destroyed once. A casting pit is different. Think of it as the foundation of a building poured before the walls go up, except the foundation costs more than the building and takes longer than any timeline Iran could hide from overhead imagery. You cannot truck in a new casting pit. Under coalition air supremacy, with satellites flagging every fresh concrete pour within hours of it being laid, you cannot build a new one either. The weapons officer wasn't looking at Shahrud's mixing capacity. He was looking at something Iran thought it had buried deep enough to survive. He had counted 14 active thermal signatures where the targeting package expected 8. Iran had expanded, not rebuilt. Expanded. New casting structures behind new blast walls, positioned to be ambiguous from orbit, identifiable only from the angle and resolution the Adirs chin-mounted sensor could achieve at this range and altitude. Roughly 1,500 missiles in various stages of production were present across the Parchin and Shahrud complexes at the time of the strikes. The weapons allocation for tonight's package had been built against 8 aim points. There were now 14. More targets than bombs, and every casting pit that survived tonight would produce missiles that reached Israeli cities next week. The weapons officer made the call in 3 words: casting pits only. The F-15I backseaters began rebuilding the target list from scratch. 12 new GPS coordinates. Reference imagery swapped from the pre-mission package to real-time electro-optical snapshots fed through the C4I data link from the Adirs ahead. Each keystroke a triage decision, this pit or the one 300 meters south that was running 4 degrees hotter. 4 minutes to release range. The fuel gauges did not care about any of it. Then the radar warning receiver lit up. Not X-band fire control. Something worse. VHF energy, Long wavelength, the kind that doesn't guide missiles but sees things that fire control radars cannot. The Adirs Phased Array Early Warning System, Iran's domestically built sensor network, had been transmitting since before the formation crossed the border. Think of standard radar as a flashlight aimed at a black mirror angled away from you. The beam disappears into darkness. VHF radar is a floodlight so wide it bounces off everything regardless of geometry. Stealth doesn't work against physics at that wavelength. The formation wasn't invisible to the Adirs. It had been tracked for 90 minutes. The Adirs doesn't shoot. It tells others where to look. At 110 kilometers northwest of Shahrud, an SA-65 battery, Iran's domestically built replacement for the S-300 systems destroyed in June 2025, mounted on an 8x8 chassis with a 200-kilometer engagement range, had been receiving bearing updates for the past 6 minutes. The battery commander had not transmitted once. He had listened, positioned, and waited. His crew understood the lesson every Iranian SAM operator had learned in the first week of the war. Emit continuously, and you cease to exist. A harm arrives at the speed of sound from a fighter you never saw. The only surviving batteries were the ones that had stayed dark long enough to learn patience. He gave his crew 3 seconds. 3 seconds of S-band phased array energy. Enough to build a partial track on the formation. Then the array went cold, and the truck started moving. 200 meters down the mountain road in darkness, dust clouds settling behind it before the next pulse. The sequence repeated. Pulse, drive, stop. Pulse again from a new position. Any harm fired at the first transmission arrived 90 seconds later at coordinates where the truck had been 20 seconds ago. The battery was invisible and mobile, and it had already found the RAM escorts. The F-35I's radar cross-section at 0.001 square meters produces nothing useful at range. An F-15I carrying conformal fuel tanks, external pylons, and a full weapons load presents a cross-section 1,000 times larger. One 3-second pulse at 100 kilometers handed the SA-65 commander a clean track on every escort in the formation. He had a firing solution. He had missiles on the rails. He had one decision left. Go continuous and take the shot, and hand every Israeli EW platform in the theater his precise GPS coordinates for the next 60 seconds. Or stay dark and watch the strike package reach Shahrud with the road clear. The formation flight lead made his own decision first. He pushed the nose down from 28,000 feet toward 20,000, closing slant range on the SA-65's last detected bearing. Not an attack run, a provocation. The same geometry the F-15I pilot had used against the TOR-M1 over the Iranian coast weeks earlier. Force the battery commander's hand. Make the cost of staying dark higher than the cost of fighting. The SA-65 commander stayed dark. He watched the contacts press toward Shahrud on his passive picture and held his fire. 3 seconds of emission at this moment would not just mark his position, it would hand the Adirs targeting data precise enough to designate him before his missiles completed their boost phase. The math had stopped working in his favor the moment the formation closed inside 60 kilometers. He chose survival over the shot. The road to Shahrud was open. At release range, the RAM weapons officers designated the 14 thermal signatures the Adirs had mapped and released. Spice 2000 guided bombs separated from pylons in sequence. 2,000-pound weapons with GPS and electro-optical seekers that compare what they see on the way down to stored reference imagery, correcting their glide path in the final seconds the way facial recognition software locks onto a face in a crowd. The bombs don't need to be aimed precisely at release. They aim themselves on arrival. The formation banked west for the tanker track before the first weapon impacted. When satellite imagery was assessed in the aftermath, the strikes had destroyed casting infrastructure that had taken months to construct and could not be reconstituted under coalition air supremacy. The concrete pits that had been curing propellant for K-Bar Shikan first-stage motors collapsed inward. The mandrels shattered. The half-cured motors in their cradles were destroyed along with the facilities built around them. Iran's missile production at Shahrud did not slow down. It stopped. The missiles that would have been built in those casting pits over the next 3 months were never built. The cities they would have been aimed at never knew the difference. That's how this kind of strike works. The damage isn't visible in the explosion. It's visible 6 months later in what doesn't launch. The SA-65 battery commander drove north through the high desert with his array still cold, his missiles still on the rails, and a facility he had been assigned to protect now burning behind him. He had made the right tactical decision. It just hadn't been enough.